All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can everyone please rise and join us in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Matthew, would you call the roll, please?
Jim Dobbin.
Here.
Jim Nelson.
Here.
James Shiloh.
Here.
Julian Davey. Here. Michael DeVito.
Here.
Eric Jones.
Present.
Christian Wren. Here. Form present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed? So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Davey. Yes. DeVito.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yep.
Wren. Yes. Donovan.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And at this point in time, I would like to convene a public hearing for the adoption of a levy in conformance to the requirements of the Truth in Taxation Act. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak to the levy? No one. Okay,
To the board?
should,
To the levy.
Oh, sorry.
the record should reflect that no one spoke when the opportunity was presented. Is there anyone who would like to submit written materials concerning the levy? Record should reflect that no written materials were submitted and that the hearing is closed. Next item is audience to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who wants to address the board on any particular issue?
Yes. Is there somewhere you want to stand?
Right on that circle there. And
Or are you all here to speak?
when it's your, when,
Okay.
you let me just introduce. When it's your turn to be heard, your comments must be limited to 3 minutes. We ask that you not mention staff members or students by name. Proper protocol for lodging concerns would be teacher, principal, superintendent. All concerns brought directly to the board will be relegated back to the proper party responsible for the issue. We ask that you be respectful and civil towards others. Silence of audience members during the meeting is appreciated so that the business of the Board of Education can be conducted without distraction. So if you would please state your name, you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name's Alex Doritos, and I live at 1119 Susan Street here in Sycamore. I'm a senior at Sycamore High School, and I've gone to Sycamore School since kindergarten. I'm here tonight because the disciplinary handling of my Spanish teacher is absolutely ridiculous. Over the 2 years I've had him for both Spanish 1 and 4, he has always been professional and taught us well. Yes, he sometimes makes remarks that without
Alex, this is a personnel issue, so I am not going to allow you to speak on the issue. If you want to make comments about this issue, you should deliver them through the principal and up through the chain.
You should let him
Superintendent
speak.
and the board. You're out of order. Sorry.
Okay.
Let the student speak.
You are out of order. One more time and I will ask you to leave the meeting.
What is this for then?
Leave the meeting.
Really?
Yes.
I'm sorry. What is it for?
For what? I didn't know who it's for.
You know who it's for. You won't let anyone speak in this meeting. I probably paid for that gavel. You
Can someone please call the security
call the
officer?
police. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna ask
Call
you
the
to
police. You know
respectfully
what?
leave as you've been
Yeah,
asked.
I'll leave. But you know what?
Then
You
please
won't
leave.
let
Please leave.
people talk because you don't like what they have to say. There's a problem here and this student has something to say. You should let him speak. Like I spoke last time for my daughter.
He's a student. He should be able to speak.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave. And
Yeah,
I would be
okay,
glad
whatever.
To
I
take
will
written
leave.
comments that you've got.
I will leave.
I'll forward it later. It's-
That'd be fine.
You know what?
I appreciate
I will
it.
leave. But you know what?
Is
Thank
there
you.
anyone else who would like to address the board this evening?
Fucking moron, too.
All right, seeing no one else, we'll move on to the next item, communications, correspondence, and informational items. Letters and newsletters. Several. Look at busy in Springfield. Too busy. FOIA requests. There was one FOIA request. There was a response. Committee reports.
The Old North Grove School met, and I think the most important thing I wanted to share was that one of the Flink boys, the Flinks went to Sycamore High School, wants to do an Eagle project out there. He wants to paint and do repairs, and I just think it's great that some of these kids realize the importance of that school and want to, use it as a platform for doing their Eagle Scout project. So just wanted you to know that.
Planning and zoning met last night. It was in the primary workshop item. It was not a decision, but an action item, but the primary workshop item was the next phase of the 55 and older senior development, which is right across the street from the middle school here. So this was provided by Mr. Granger, the developer. I'll happily pass it around as public knowledge. He's looking at that remaining, a little over 18.5 acres. At one point, you may recall that up here at the top, they used to have a commercial property there, and this was zoned commercial in its last iteration. Last night we did change it to R3 to allow this to take place. If it does move forward, it was just a workshop item. But there are 21 buildings that are there. Each are 4-unit buildings, so that'd be, 84 units. He said that typically, from a growth standpoint, once they were to start, they do 3, maybe 4 buildings a year, so 12 to 16 units. So it would be at least 5 years before that whole area would likely be built out, unless they have a rush on people trying to buy them. They have sold about 2/3 of phase 1, which is at the bottom there right now. It includes a same garden area in the center, includes 2 pickleball courts in the center. It also is going to include a clubhouse building with an indoor pool. Yes. There were comments, most of the comments were smaller comments about some additional sidewalks and some things like that. The other major comment was that there is only one way in and out at the bottom, primary access point, which is not uncommon. You can go to about 5 different Kirpin developments that are very similar, one way in, one way out. The curb cut that is right across the street here, that's been there for many, many years, they are intending to use that as an emergency access point, so if for some reason this was blocked by an accident and police or fire needed to get there, they would have another access point. There was some talk about trying to move that to the top, to the north, to Maplewood, and most of us, I said I would rather not add more traffic to that intersection myself. It's too much at the middle school already, we're all aware of that. And if we ever were to get IDOT approval to do anything down here, it would probably want to align with a curb cut at some point. So it was, again, just a workshop item. We did vote on the rezoning, so it was rezoned to, or recommended to be rezoned to R3, so the council will have to act on that. Again, these are 55 and older units. They're selling for a pretty good rate. He has a track record. This is about the 4th development in Sycamore that way. They're quality facilities, and he's been pretty easy to work with, and we've worked with him in the past. So, I think it's a positive. I also think it's a nice, slow, controlled, I'm not putting all these up in 18 months type of approach. That will go to council for discussion, and then I imagine he'll be back in January when we may have an action item on that. So,
What's the green space on the south end?
down here?
Yeah.
Those are detention areas, so that's
Oh, okay.
taking water. So down here at the bottom are both detention areas right now. And the sidewalk that people wanted added was along this side of Mount Hunger. there is no real connection there. This road has a sidewalk that goes all the way around it, so they don't have to walk on the roadway inside the space. But there was no connection right here. There was also talk about, should they have a crosswalk for people that are here that want to come use the clubhouse, which they can do.
Or get to Old Mill Park.
Yeah, so this is phase one, phase two, right?
Right.
So, what they said is that we'd rather not put one right, next to the other. They would walk down, cross over here, and walk back that way, which accommodates that. The one other thing is that there is no sidewalk connection up in the top, other than out at the roadway. So we said you may want to extend at least a little sidewalk up there so you can get in and out of the neighborhood and continue a longer walk to the north. So that was the majority of the meeting. It was a favorable recommendation for moving forward. There were some questions about, how big of a pool can you put in that building, and how can you accommodate all these residents, and basically, the way those, you never build them for all the residents. There's an occupancy level set, so whatever size it is, it'll have a posted occupancy. It'll be, 20 or 50 or 80 or 100, whatever the bather load is, but that was the entire meeting. So I wanted to share that.
Does IDOT have to give approval for the emergency use of that curb cut?
They will, yes. Even though the curb cut exists, and the intent is that that would be bollard, so they could only pull those if they absolutely had to do that. It would be far enough so that a car could pull off if they, had an emergency or whatever, or an entire vehicle could pull off without having before they pull the bollards. But yes, they do still have to give formal approval for it to be on that curb cut. And the other point is that right now in there, it's wide enough for a fire truck. Police and fire have reviewed it, but the radius is there probably need to be increased. So if a fire truck had to come in that way, they wouldn't be driving through the yard. Increase the turning radius on either side. All the rest of it met requirements for the full ladder truck and anything else that might go in there. So
You can make the turnaround.
at both ends, you can make the turnaround. Yeah, no problem. So they've reviewed that, and again, I think it's overall it's positive. It's nice controlled growth and not necessarily adding load to the school district. So just wanted to share that.
Is there any long-term discussion about Route 23 though, and potentially widening that, or are they
Well,
concerned about traffic flow?
we didn't talk much about it. We've talked about it in the past, and there are easements along there that we can't get into anyway. So if and when they ever widen that road, those already exist, and Nathan from the county was already there to say that's how that would work. If they ever, and it's already kind of got wider edges to it right now. So the capabilities to it can accommodate that, but there is no time frame on when they may be widening that at this point. So,
And one more somewhat unrelated question, but I think it relates to your committee, so just table it if it needs to be discussed later, but I know like North Grove Elementary, the entrance this week got shut down, or last week, due to an accident there at that intersection, which has not been uncommon of late. Do you know if there's been any talk at the planning level? I think that's a county-controlled road, so really the city of Sycamore isn't having a say in what happens. I know that the residents around North Elementary had similar issues with the either Freed or Brickville, or light, and there's difficulties with traffic. There's no other way to get to North Grove if that intersection is closed.
Correct.
Those kids are
unless you go all
right, a 30-minute drive
out by my house and back.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So. No, we have not had any conversation about that recently, and I do believe it is county road, yes, at that point. So, and Nathan sits on the committee, he's the county road commissioner, so, or engineer. So, I can certainly ask him at the end of the meeting what their thoughts are having, seeing more activity at that intersection. So, I'll put that in my notes to ask him.
Yeah, that would certainly be a good question.
Sure.
Citizens Advisory Committee met December 2nd. This was a committee that Mr. Wilder kind of started back up last year. We met a handful of times last year. There's about 20 parents with students from all ages, and some students that only have high school, or some students that have elementary, middle, and high school. So there's a wide variety in the group. We started with, I think, was it 20 last year?
Yeah.
About 20 this year, yeah. So 20 last year with the idea that every year we would turn over half the committee. So there's some consistency with some new faces to the committee, new ideas and things like that. So we met for the first time, and an email went out to the parents about joining, and we had over 100 for sure. So a lot of interest, obviously. So we met, we had some good discussion about a lot of topics, COVID, PLCs, start and end times, discussion into next year, and just trying to get, we had part of that was introductions as well, and all this, getting to know who is what kids in the district, and then just having, what does this look like moving forward? So we're going to meet quarterly and just have those type of discussions. Hopefully, some of those parents, there was a survey sent out to some of those parents about some of the other items that were on the agenda, and then which it just kind of goes into just opinions, thoughts, feedback from this current year with the late start on Thursdays, the dismissal times, start and dismissal times at each of the schools as well. So we had a nice discussion there, and then hopefully as we move forward, we kind of have, we always reserve time for a roundtable in that as well. So to be able to bring forth ideas or questions that, might be a hot topic to somebody who has students at the middle school as opposed to, parents that, haven't thought that way at something at the elementary school. So there's definitely a good mix, and obviously a high demand. So if anybody, we ask that they serve for 2 years, but if somebody should have to come off, we would look to replace them with obviously the fluid candidates that we already have, or that have showed interest at least. So our next meeting is in January at some point, and then, like I said, we'll meet quarterly moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other committee reports? Next item then is Assistant Superintendent for Business, adoption of the 2021 tax levy resolution.
Thanks, Jim. I just have a couple review slides today. We had an in-depth conversation on the levy back in October. So tonight I'm just bringing the final levy back to the board. First slide I have there are just the current assumptions that we've used for the formula. We know CPI is 1.4% for this levy year. We've estimated our EAV change at 3%, and that's working with our county assessors. And then estimated new construction for the levy year is about $8.6 million. So again, all those numbers are used in our formula to come up with the extension that we're asking the county for. You want to go to the next slide, Steve? This is just the impact on the tax rate just for the school district's portion of an individual's tax bill. So our total tax rate for the school district has gone down consistently over the last 4 years. That will be the case again this year. Again, that's just for your portion of the school district on your tax bill. And then the next slide, there is a little change here. We did finalize our bond restructuring in between when I presented the tentative levy and then tonight. And so that has changed our debt service extension moving forward. And so the money that we're asking for our debt service has gone down a little bit than what I brought to you guys in the tentative levy. So overall, we're looking at about a 4.94% increase of the amount that we're asking the county for. That's not the amount that we'll get. It'll be lower than that, but we want to make sure that we're capturing all the dollars that are owed to the school district. So that was the only change I had there. And then the next slide, again, is just the calendar timeline for us. If the board approves the levy tonight, then we'll file that with the county. And then we'll start receiving our first payments in June of 2022. Are there any questions that came up in between October and tonight that I can answer for you guys?
I know there's a lag, and I know you've talked about it in the past, but so the CPI rate of 1.4, that was based on what calendar year?
So that was based on December 31st, 2020.
Right.
Yep.
So I know there's been talk in the public about, seeing, Social Security and everything else the payments are getting adjusted because there's been a high CPI this year, but it takes, a year and a half, 2 years before that actually trickles through from a
Correct.
levy standpoint.
And we've seen high CPIs throughout calendar years, but then they start to plummet towards the end of the year. So again, for levy purposes, it uses the December prior to the levy. So, yep.
Just to restate, you said our rate has gone down consistently for how many years?
I believe this is the 4th year.
4 years.
Yes.
I think that's important to hear, it's gone down for 4 years.
Correct. It doesn't mean your tax bill went down. That's only the school district's portion. Yep.
But our rate, what we're asking for has gone down.
Correct.
Or are able to ask for.
Correct.
For a tax cut.
The other big factor is assessed valuation.
Yes.
And that tends to go up.
Yes, which is good for you as a
Yeah, you want
homeowner.
those to go up.
That's
This one
all
is
I
signed
have.
to sell.
Only for yourself, right?
Yeah. That's all that I had, Jim, so I would just ask for the board to adopt the final levy tonight.
So is there a motion to adopt the levy resolution as presented?
So,
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Davy?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Ren?
yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Gumbel?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item is superintendent's report.
Good evening. I've got 3 items that I'd like to report to the board on. Before I do that, I just want to review our mission, empowering all learners to succeed in their world. Our vision, to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values, I'm just going to highlight a couple of these: trustworthiness, empathy, respect, some responsibility, and collaboration. And then our professional learning communities, those groups meet regularly. That's part of that Thursday morning, and some of the questions that they ask themselves are and discuss: what do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? That brings me to 7.01, which is property tax abatement qualifying criteria and definitions. This is really just kind of a revisiting one of the items that we discussed at the meeting last month. No, not asking for any approval or any decisions this evening. Just kind of want to revisit this. This has to do with the economic development and amending the existing agreement. I've not indicated to the DCEC that we're in favor or opposed, or just that we're in the midst of considering it. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you guys have tonight. Otherwise, I would just ask you if you have any questions, you can send to me. I'll bullet point them and work with the director to get those responses. He has indicated that he would be glad to attend the board meeting, answer some of those questions, provide answers to me in writing, and I can share with the board. And if a subcommittee of the board would like to meet with Paul to go over those things, I'm sure we could arrange that too. But just wanted to revisit this after the meeting and the discussion last month.
Are there any changes made to this document since that time?
No, nothing since last month, or the last meeting.
I still see several references to 2020 dates for when this was effective, when we were signing it, et cetera. So it's still an issue. I think the other issue, Jim, was definition.
Definitions.
Rebuild.
If there's anything specific, just a reminder, shoot me an email. If you send those to me, I'll compile those and I'll work with Paul to get answers to the board.
But with those 2020 dates, they're not looking for this to be retroactive, or all of a sudden we're writing something back, right?
I don't believe so, and we are one of several other taxing bodies that has yet to review this and approve it. So I think there's some time to go still. I'm not aware that they'd like to make anything retroactive. I think they'd like to make it effective as soon as they get all the taxing bodies to sign off on it.
So do you know if they've been getting suggested changes from other bodies? Or?
Not that I'm aware of, but I really haven't quizzed Mr. Borick about that, so I couldn't say. I've had a little correspondence with him, but he's not indicated that any changes have been made.
I really appreciate him coming and talking about this. The effectiveness for the district and filling in some of the holes. I just think sometimes it's easier than the person standing here so we can at least say, okay, why, that type of thing. So
Sure.
we can.
Probably worth revisiting since we have some board members instead.
Yeah, before that as well.
Signed as well.
See if we can get him in January.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments about this item? Okay. I'm going to move on to 7.02, which is approval of the 22-23 calendar. We did review the dates one more time. After the review and some survey results, I'm still recommending option 2 for board approval this evening. Just a reminder, the two options, the two calendars were really similar, other than these differences that had to do with winter break, when it starts and ends, as well as Teachers Institutes being right after winter break and then at the end of the year, or 2 dates at the end of the year. Still recommending option 2. I think that provides ample time for travel for staff and families for winter break. It also provides an opportunity for professional development and/or training immediately following winter break, but then also again at the end of the school year. So this evening, we'd like to present option 2 to the board for approval for the 22-23 school year.
Is there a motion to approve the 22-23 school year calendar, option 2 as presented?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes?
Ren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
Gumbel?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The last item I have for the board this evening, 7.03, has to do with audience to visitors, policies and procedures. How
Timely
appropriate.
topic.
Yeah, how appropriate. So I'm not recommending any changes, just want to review some of the board's policies and procedures. Would be open for discussion, would be glad to take any direction from the board, but really not presenting any changes, just want to review some of our policies and procedures. First of all, audience to visitors is intended to provide opportunity for public input. The purpose of board meetings is to conduct board business. It's not necessarily to engage in two-way dialogue that could happen at a town hall type of meeting, but these meetings are really for the board to conduct business, which is why those public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board outlines the guidance for public participation in a pamphlet. I think all the board members have that, and if anybody's interested in seeing it, there's probably not enough copies. If you want one, let us know, we'll get you one. It's also governed by Board Policy 2230. I did not include the entire board policy for 2230. Both of these are hyperlinks, so when they're on the website, people can click on them and review those documents. I did, however, include a couple of the highlights. Comments and questions are subject to reasonable constraints. Individuals who choose to speak are required to provide their name and address to establish that they are residents of the district. Individuals are asked not to mention names during their comments. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And then conduct should be respectful and abide by Board Policy 830, which has to do with visitors on school district property. Which is a nice segue to Board Policy 830, and I included some highlights here as well. That's also a hyperlink so that when this is posted, anybody can look at that. This is the current Board Policy for 830. There's an expectation of respect, civility, and orderly conduct. Aggressive behavior, physical and or verbal, is not allowed. Disrupting any school activity or function is not allowed. Being present under the influence of alcohol or cannabis is not allowed. Conduct that violates other district policy is not allowed. Visitors are required to follow directives from an authorized security officer or district employee. Violators of this policy may be ejected from school property and may be denied admission to future events, any school event, or any time on school district property for up to 1 calendar year. There's a process where that's communicated to an individual if they've broken the policy. There's a hearing that they are able to take advantage of. They don't necessarily have to, but the board has quite a bit of latitude to limit access to school property if the conduct is not followed. Obviously, there's been an increase in public participation in board meetings over the last couple of years, which prompted a review of the policies. They're presented solely this evening for review. They can be changed. It would go through the policy committee for review and then a recommendation to the board on 2 readings, and then ultimately be approved by the board itself. So there's a process there. If changes need to be made, we certainly can do that, but just wanted to review for the board our policies and procedures for public comment and audience to visitors. Any questions for me?
Do these people, I'm just noticing in the pamphlet here, under public comments at meetings, it says, any citizen wishing to address the board on a public matter is encouraged to contact the superintendent a week before. I have, maybe you've already said this, but have people been doing that?
They have not.
Is that something you would, I mean, to me, that would be important, just because of some of the stuff that's happened? Is that something you can maybe consider, getting a little more strict on that?
I can tell you just from my experience that there are some school districts that have made that a matter of practice for quite a while, for many years, just because it kind of helps, the board prepare for the meeting. If there's a topic that's going to be discussed, they don't necessarily engage in that two-way dialogue, but at least they've done a review of a policy or a procedure. They've touched base with the superintendent to investigate a matter in the school district. I wouldn't say it's super common across the state, at least of Illinois. But up until 2 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of public comment at board meetings. It's something that boards have always invited. There just hasn't been a lot of that other than the last year and a half to 2 years. So I would encourage the board, if there are going to be any changes, to consider not only the short-term, but the long-term effects too. Although I would reiterate that the policy can be changed, through a process that takes a little bit of time, but isn't, very lengthy. Asking members of the public to contact the superintendent's office and let us know that they're going to, that they'd like to speak at the board meeting is certainly something that we can begin doing. I would work with our communications department and make sure that that change is communicated to the public so they are well aware of that in advance.
Well, I think we would get away from, Mr. Dunn having to repeat to people, you can't say that, you can't bring up people's names, if they knew that ahead of time. Not that they're not going to try, but I'm just saying, I want people to be able to talk, but I also don't want people to be, their names thrown out here. I just don't think that's right.
And certainly something to consider.
Yeah, I agree that I think we need to have a firmer policy perhaps, to make that better known when it comes to personnel issues. And not only that people shouldn't be naming staff members, teachers, administrators, but also identifying them in other ways that they're readily knowable, identifiable.
Like a nickname or...
Yeah, or just the situation. And there are ways to deal with those issues and do that privately. And it's only fair to the person that is the subject of the complaint to allow them to know what the complaint is and to be able to address it, and to have it addressed in a forum where we don't have a give and take back and forth. There's no opportunity to rebut what's being said about you. I think it's incorrect. It's unjust, and so I think we need to ratchet down some of those provisions a little bit more. The other, in talking with other districts and looking and doing some research, the other issue that I see is that a lot of boards will take action to eliminate repetitive comments. And we have seen this in the past where basically the same comment is made over and over and over again by different individuals. And, the number of times the comment is made doesn't necessarily, enhance the issue. So it does take quite a bit of time. And then another issue that I think we need to address is something that doesn't seem to occur in other districts, and that is this idea of ceding time. Of saying, giving my 3 minutes to them, giving my 3. And sometimes we have 5, 6, 7 people who are ceding their time to somebody else, and we get into all kinds of issues about how much time and whether we counted time properly and those kind of things. But truly, 3 minutes should be enough to express basically what the concept of your comment is and what your thoughts are to the board. And as you say, this isn't a public meeting where the public comment is there to have a give and take between the board and the audience, those in attendance. It's a business meeting that's held in public, So like any other board meeting for any corporation or something like that, you wouldn't have, the board's agenda changed or interrupted or delayed because there were people in the room who wanted to engage the board. There's a time and a place to do that, but it's not at the board's business meeting. So we do have business to carry out, so we kind of have to, I think, make these meetings run as smoothly as we possibly can. So, those were the issues I saw that we probably need to work on, and maybe the policy committee can go to work on those issues and come up with some recommendations. So I think that our instructions for public comment could be a little bit more concise and perhaps a little bit more rigorous in terms of what can and can't be said. And it's not in the spirit of limiting debate, it's in the spirit of protecting individuals who can't be here to defend themselves, and also in helping to run a more timely meeting.
So we've got a policy meeting in January. Should we
Yes.
add this to that agenda and at least initiate those that started that conversation?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that, knowing that we had a meeting in January, we could just add that. Kathy, help me remember to that agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a look at those and maybe propose some draft changes.
If everybody is in agreement, then we can refer it to the policy committee to come up with some suggestions.
Sure, if we had some individual suggestions, would you like those addressed to?
Absolutely.
Who would you like them addressed to before the meeting?
We can send them to the superintendent.
That way he has it.
Anything else?
That's really all I had for that item, and that's the last of the superintendent's report.
Next item then is open discussion and future agenda items. Open discussion, issues, observations, questions? Any future agenda items?
There's that list down there. Is there any that has been lingering that we should come back to?
I was trying to pull it up. I know the one that was missing, that I didn't see a couple of weeks ago. I brought it up pre-pandemic, so it's kind of gone to the wayside, but was looking at possibly having a different auditor come in. We've used the same auditing firm for a long time. And having seen what happened in Dixon, I know there was some legislation that got proposed shortly after Dixon to require districts to change auditors every so often, and I think that's going to be a recurring issue. I think it warrants at least a discussion of what our practice is there, and whether it's worth having a different set of eyes take a look every once in a while to ensure that everything's on the up and up. It's easy to get complacent and potentially miss something just out of comfortableness.
How long have we used this current audit?
Since I've been here, so the last 13 years.
Which isn't uncommon from what I've heard from other districts.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you, I mean, every auditor has to follow the same GASB rules. So, I mean, they're still required to follow, everything from the SEC. So, but I mean, I'm obviously open to having a discussion about it. I think it provides continuity having the same auditor personally, or maybe selfishly, but, we do have a great working relationship with our auditors, but they are required to follow the same rules as, every auditor is supposed to. So, but I get having, a fresh set of eyes, like you said, so.
So not something we can talk about today, because I don't think we make that election until later in the spring, April, May. Maybe.
I typically sign a contract early spring,
Okay.
late winter,
So if we could put it on the agenda at some point, just have a discussion, pros, cons.
If we can get it in January, right, or maybe the first week in February. Will that give you enough time?
Yeah.
And I see on the list of future agenda items, we had Officer Hooper here back on May 11th, and we were going to do a follow-up for Safe to Help Illinois. Would that, now that we're through the first semester, would that make sense to do maybe in February?
Yeah.
Follow up to that? I see that one on there. I don't want to wait a whole year to implement it.
Anything else for future agenda items?
No, it might be nice to, I know Piker does a lot of work with, our representative, Jeff Piker does a lot of work in education. It might be interesting to have him come to a future board meeting, maybe and update us on what's going on in Springfield from an education standpoint. And then maybe solicit our feedback on things we're looking for.
Yeah, we used to invite our.
I know Pritchard used to be pretty active.
Pritchard used to do that.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Certainly invite him and see if he'll take up the invitation. Other future agenda items? And is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel, negotiations, and imminent litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yep.
Brent?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Davey?
Yes.
Reader?
Yes.
Dunn? Motion carried.
All right, we'll go into executive session and then we'll return for our final. Okay, we're back to regular session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Brent?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Davey? Reader?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing issuance of notice of remedial warning to tenured teacher as presented?
Moved.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Tyler?
Yes.
Davey? Reader?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes. Is
Motion carried.
there a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.